This week we road test the Jaecoo J7, and that's an upmarket version of a Chery car. It's the Chery conglomerate that is building it. The front is dominated by a very wide and quite deep grille. The important point of the wheels is that they've now got Continental tyres and it's an all-wheel drive. And I've got to say that gives a much greater grip. Fantastically different, but enough to tell you what brand of car it is, that it's got all-wheel drive, and it's the J7 model. Some interesting things about the powertrain. It is a 1.6 litre petrol engine, not large in capacity but turbocharged, and that produces 137 kilowatts of power and 275 newton metres of torque. Now that's quite As part of the tsunami of new cars coming from China onto the Australian market, we have a plethora of new car names to get used to. But they're not all from separate companies. Now, is this just a case of a few more bells and whistles, a bit more upmarket bling for a car? Or is there some real deep-seated, solid feeling of improvement over the vehicle? I think there is. And so let's go and road test this Jaecoo J7. Let's have a look at the outside. Now clearly the front is dominated by a very wide and quite deep grille. And to the side there are the pods, which aren't as fancy as some, although a little bit of styling to them. They look more like a small two-storey unit. And then you have the lights and running lights that have these little architectural features to them. Overall, I think it's distinctive, but perhaps a little domineering, but the look of it is still very squarish in its style, yet it does look as though it's got its own character to it, and a number of people commented on that. The important point of the wheels is that they've now got Continental tyres and it's an all-wheel drive, and I've got to say that gives a much greater grip. They're a 50 profile, so it's not too low profile, which can make for more noise. On the side there, that feature along the, not so much the base sill, but a little bit just further up for this line here, breaks the whole look of that side panel, which is fairly flat, with just one strong waistline, which actually peters out as you go along. The back has that look of a sizable SUV with a little bit of design features to it. At the back, not fantastically different, but enough to tell you what brand of car it is, that it's got all-wheel drive, and it's the J7 model. It does have electric tailgate to it, opening to what I think is a rather good sized boot. If you look at the availability there, not many features in terms of, although there's a 12-point power outlet there, which I quite like. Now when you put this security feature in and it blocks here, it is quite significant that it limits the amount of vision you have out the back. We'll talk about that, which I think is part to do with the mirror of the car. The handles come out when you are in close proximity, and you can see that we've got a bit of junk here in the back, but getting in the car, Well, I've got the seat quite well back. I can get my feet under there. I've got almost a reasonable amount of support up under the legs here, and of course plenty of room. Not a lot of controls here in the back, and in fact, the interesting thing is, though, I can control the passenger seat if I think that I need a little bit more room, as long as I tell people. I find the layout here is a bit techno in its appearance. That's okay. And of course the mood lighting extends there, and it has a sunroof which extends all the way back to the back of the car. I need a wide angle lens to make that work. But we'll see in the front of the car what will become most prominent is the portrait size infotainment screen.
If you value independent journalism or simply enjoyed the video, please support the channel by hitting like and subscribe.
Hydraulics, lovely. Turbo, 1.6 litre turbo car. Big battery, bit of room under there. Some interesting things about the powertrain. It is a 1.6 litre petrol engine, not large in capacity but turbocharged, and that produces 137 kilowatts of power and 275 newton metres of torque. Now that's quite typical of this mid-size SUV category of cars. Most of them are around that figure, although things like the hybrid Toyota does go higher, and the Kia Sportage does go lower for the entry level, which is also a manual. So it's cheaper in price, but you pay for that in other ways. This car has a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, but most particularly it is all-wheel drive, and with Continental tyres I think that really enhances the grip. It does have a range of modes such as mud and off-road capability like dirt and gravel, but certainly not climbing up the side of mountains like a very rough and tough four-wheel drive. Its fuel consumption, I'll talk about the details in a moment, but the first thing I noticed was that around the urban area it appears to be getting around 8 litres per 100. Even when you're on a short trip, engine is cold, and I think that's better significantly than the Cherry, but that's a personal perception. We'll look at the hard figures in a moment. Now the car detects that you're in proximity and unlocks the door for you, and as soon as you open it, the first thing it does immediately for you is turn the radio on, which I don't want. I don't want noise, particularly early in the morning. Now, you can turn it off by pressing that button, fine, and you can drop the volume, but I haven't worked out a way to totally turn that off. So there's absolutely no noise and no requirement for me to do anything when I first get in the car. Okay, once we get in the car and overcome the sound issues, get the car going, make sure everything's turned off. I'll turn the fan down a little. Most obvious thing is the Portrait Large, which is over 14 inches size infotainment screen, and the layout I think is usable. The buttons on the steering wheel are limited. There's not a lot there. There's a couple of dents in there, but fundamentally it is a touch screen or touch panel type of approach. Now I've got my cruise control here, which turns it on and sets lane keep assist, and I then have buttons to go up and down. Nice set out, nothing in terms of buttons, but there's a touchpad along the bottom that gives a moderate amount of choices. One is I can change my temperature or the passenger can. I can't change my fan speed, but I press the fan and it brings up a more detailed screen. I can go to home and I can go to car. And the car gives me the things, including quick control. I'll come to that. And that's not too bad. I do have, and I quite like this, a button here to immediately turn on the windscreen demister. I once had a case, I was driving up a motorway and for some reason, whoosh, it suddenly misted up. Nothing I did. And I was fumbling to try and work out what the hell I should do to turn on that. The buttons weren't clear, it was a big screen. My wife, of course, was very quick to point out, wind the window down, but this has a button there for that. I can turn the screen on and off, and I can turn the air conditioner on and off. I like that because it tells me the air conditioner is either on or off. I have a mode button, which gives me a wide choice. It tells me eco, normal, sport, went off, snow, mud, or sand. That's a good choice, but as I say, that's not for very rugged off-roading, but for more adventure, to go to a few locations where you want to be comfortable even if you're on a dirt road. When you pull it into gear, it goes into drive, and if you keep pulling it down, it doesn't have what the Cherry had, which was that annoying feature of going into manual. If I press the button on the side, there's a manual button. If you press the manual button, it works. Now, I'm going to drive, and something immediately happens. Let's have a look. Drive. Clomp. I just heard a noise that sounded a bit like something significant had just broken. Not a loud snap, but more just a failure of some sort, or I'd hit something solid. And the answer is, it is the automatic locking of the doors. It's just so noisy. Sounds a first world problem, but it is disconcerting until you get used to it. And you know, over a week, I'm not sure I'm used to it quite yet. Pulling out of a driveway, car coming, not a problem, but just as long as everything happens quickly enough and the power is there. It's got that response. You remember I talked about it being a turbocharged engine, and it certainly helps that when the power comes on, it comes on at low revs and is strong. So I'm just turning onto a main road. There's not punch in the back stuff there, but it's firm. I think the screen in front of me is clearly digital and has a range of functions you can pick. It automatically takes me back to recording the fuel consumption, etc., based on the immediate trip. I guess there is somewhere in here an average over the life of the car. Okay, it's showing me on the head-up display, which is a bit too high. I've adjusted it down low, but there's still quite a gap. It is almost intruding a little bit into my line of sight. But it does show me a lot of information, not the least of which is I've got 43 Ks left in the petrol tank. But good information, that's good. It doesn't necessarily show me that all the time, but given that I'm low, it's showing me that I've got the cruise control ready to go at 58 Ks, and it's detecting the cars and the lanes around me. And it's showing me that detection of what it's perceiving to be vehicles around me. It's not as good as, say, a Tesla. And the Tesla is so comprehensive and appearing to be so accurate, even picking up traffic on going in the other direction, picking up pedestrians and that. This is picking me up that there's a car not in the lane, but over to the left, a bit off the road. Well, in fact, there's a huge, great truck beside me, and now it's picking that. So it doesn't pick up what's beside me, it picks up more of what's ahead of me. It does, of course, have blind spot pickup, so it's not as if I don't know what's there. I get a little red light warning on the side that the thing is in the blind spot if I've got my blinkers on. It really doesn't pick it up very well unless there's moving. So when I was stationary, that's when the truck was there and it wasn't showing me. One of the great improvements, in my opinion, over the Cherry is the feel of the steering. It's not fantastic, it's not race car sensitivity, but it is far more engaging with the vehicle in what it's doing. It's not light and fluffy. Now I've got it in sports mode, and really I don't think that means a great deal. I've gone down to eco mode, and it's still got enough feel in the steering. It's clearly electronic steering, which is a little bit sort of techno rather than feel for it, but that's a mild point. Most cars now, of course, are electronic, but at least I feel like I'm getting some feedback. And when I turn a corner, it keeps that same level of feedback. In the Cherry, you tended, when you went on full lock, it got even more vague. So I like this. There are two things that don't work well together. One of them is a stop-start function, and that doesn't work well with a dual clutch transmission. Both systems independently need a little bit of time to think when you go. So if it's turned the engine off to save fuel and pollution, you put your foot on the accelerator, it starts it up, but it takes that little fraction of a second. A dual clutch transmission also often doesn't engage instantaneously like an automatic gearbox. So when you put the two together, you sit here and I'm waiting to turn right. There's got to make sure there's traffic. If I had to come to a complete stop, I put my foot down, and that sense, it's only momentarily that it happens, but it is something that hits in the pit of your stomach. Oh, it's not going. So what you tend to do is put your foot further onto accelerator, which then, when everything engages, whoosh, you go at a speed that you really don't want, and is quite a surprise. Now, I think this car is much nicer to drive without the stop-start function on it. I know there's a movement in America to actually ban it. I'm not sure that's necessary. I think there's a whole range of other things that are far more important, including having systems that aren't distracting or minimise distraction. But this car, to my mind, is much better without the stop-start working. Now, there's also a funny thing about the car. Apparently, according to the manual, which I read some of, if you disconnect the battery and put it back on, for whatever reason, the car takes a bit of time to adapt back into a regular mode in terms of, I guess, the engine management systems. Now, why, I don't know. It's not something I've come across before, and I wondered if that was why, when I got in the car to start with, it felt one way. I was particularly noticing the poor lag time with the stop-start and the dual clutch transmission. Most cars take a little bit of getting used to. This one has its idiosyncrasies. I, however, found it easier to come to grips with than I did with the Cherry Tiggo.
Have your own thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Good, bad, or in between. Have a chat with us by dropping a comment below.